Meet Daniel, the Associate Director of Programming and Partnerships at Oz Arts, as well as the Producing Artistic Director at Kindling Arts. Accompanying this conversation is a tour with Daniel throughout Oz Arts, talking about the art and history behind this organization. So right before we jump in, remember to like and subscribe and enjoy this episode of Convos with Aaron. Daniel, thank you for coming on Convos with Aaron, and thank you for allowing me to shoot it here at Oz Arts.
A pleasure. Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do?
I am the Associate Director of Programming and Partnerships here at Oz Arts, Nashville, where we are Nashville's home for contemporary performance and art. We do a mix of primarily touring acts that are a mix of local, national, and international. And so we bring in artists from all over the world to present their performance art. And we also have a small visual arts program as well. And then for local artists in a completely separate platform, I'm also the Producing Artistic Director of Kindling Arts, which is a platform for local experimental and contemporary performance makers. Our primary piece of programming is a 4-day summer festival at the end of July, and we take over many venues. This last year it was 8 venues that had 19 different projects in them. And so you could go see a wide variety of contemporary dance.
How do you manage your time with all that? Do you have no free time? It sounds like you don't.
It's feast and famine sometimes. I think there have been periods that have been more difficult than others, but a lot of what is very intentional about the programming for both of these is figuring out how one programs around the other. So when the Oz Art season basically runs from September through early June, and so one of the reasons that the festival is in the dead of the summer is because Oz is slower, as is like pretty much the entire performing arts industry. And so one of the reasons that we're targeting that is we know that our actors and dancers and technicians, for example, don't really have a lot of work during the summer. So the festival can provide a platform where people can have work. But everything about the scheduling of Kindling events is always in conversation with the Oz events, and the Oz season is always set by the middle of the summer. So right now we're recording this in early August, and we know what the next 9 months look like for Oz Arts.
I can imagine too that planning, especially your position, planning is such an important part of how you structure your year.
Summer's a little bit slower here, and that's where Kindling kind of takes over, whereas the Oz season is really more on that academic calendar almost. But your question's an interesting one because a big part of curation in general is figuring out how frequent things can happen and what the right mix of those things is between the different months. So in our case at Oz Arts, for example, we usually try to open the season with a really big visiting artist production that often is from an international company and is often dance. We have a really vibrant dance audience here at Oz Arts. And so you'll see if you look at several seasons that often it is common that the first visiting artist production is a big visiting dance company from another country.
Do you get energy from the change of that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'd be interested to know what it would be like to work in a more traditional producing environment. I imagine what it must be like to be on Broadway, for example. And some of these people are in shows for years, a show for years, or working on a show for years. And that must be a very different experience. But I do find something really exciting about the volume that we're able to do in the presenting world. And also just the ways that when you have that many opportunities to showcase different art, you really can take a lot more risks and you can tell a lot of different kinds of stories. And so one of the things that you'll see in the Oz Arts programming consistently is this fascinating mixture of human beings and narratives and cultures and expressions. And sometimes that comes out through the technology that they're using to share their art, like crazy multimedia and insane projection work. But sometimes it's also just about the human being and their lived experience and what they're bringing to the table. Oz Arts is a very unique facility because it used to be a cigar warehouse for the company CAO Cigars. And CAO is the initials of the founder of Oz Arts, Jono Osgener. Jono was a Turkish immigrant who started the cigar company out of his basement, and his family has been heavily involved in that company this whole time. And they eventually grew it and sold it off to a European conglomerate, which is when this facility opened up to become a contemporary art and performance center as a gift back to the city. So behind me is this very interesting case that has all of these really cool meerschaum pipes. And meerschaum is the soft sea mineral that allows you to kind of do these really intricate carvings into the stone. And it has created some really very detailed pipes that have just a lot going on. Some of them are almost unusably large and intricate, but they're very beautiful artworks unto themselves. And interestingly, Jono was not only a collector of these pipes, he loved them so much that he was very interested in what it would be like to have large-scale sculptures made of some of the pipes. So up on the hillside at Oz Arts, you'll see these two really large Bacchus heads that were made by the artist Brian Somerville, who lives here in Nashville.
Yeah. Well, and talking about your lived experience, where did you even start to have an inkling that you wanted to do something like this?
So I grew up in Knoxville originally, where there's not very much in the performing arts.
It's just football, right? It's
a lot of football. Go Vols. I don't actually care, but
just had to sneak it in there just in case.
I don't want to be doxxed, by the Vols fans. But yeah, so Knoxville is kind of a place where culture is not the top of the docket on what people are thinking about with their outings and their activities. And so I was really excited to move out of the region, and I went to school in Boston at this place called Emerson College. Okay. And Emerson at the time had just bought up a bunch of old theaters, and they started a presenting organization very similar to the work that Oz does, and it was called Arts Emerson: The World on Stage. And so it was a lot of especially theater, a lot of European theater coming through. And that was my freshman year, was the first season. And I started to see all of this work from around the world just because I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And while I was there, they started a creative producing seminar, and I was one of the first guinea pigs in that creative producing seminar. And that's really where it started to click for me. When I had entered school, I thought I was going to write novels. I was really interested in writing, but the reality was I was in the theater 3 or 4 nights a week. And I had to actually ask myself at some point, I was like, if we're spending this much time with the performing arts, maybe we should try to do something with it.
Yeah. Well, that's smart too. And that's cool that you got a chance to listen to yourself and what you were like, I got to be honest with myself. And I think that's an important part that a lot of people, especially in college, deal with.
Right.
What would be some advice to people that are going through that?
I think one of the pieces of advice is that life is very long and very bizarre. So you don't actually know where it's going to take you next. And following your instincts on that front can be valuable. What you're actually interested in makes itself known to you during that time, has been my experience. Sometimes we're not always fortunate enough to work in the field that we want to be in at any given moment. There were times in my career where I did not get to work immediately with the art that I was hoping to, but you can always find a way that those skills can be transferred to what you want to do, and you can always have a creative pursuit outside of what your day job is.
On the flip side too, a lot of creative art forms kind of exploit the person on the inside. Totally. And I think a lot of people in the creative field blend their work with their, craft. And I think you see some really beautiful artworks from that. And I also think there are times where people go through a dark path. But all that being said, absolutely. I feel like in today's job market, man, you're going into the deep end.
Sometimes the things that stand out to people are the experiences that you choose to have, or you find a way to have. It's not always having to have the exact right thing on your resume, but it might be that you lived abroad for a year in a country that someone else lived in, and suddenly you're bonding over that. And, there's all sorts of ways to do that. We cannot over stress the value of networking in the current world. There's so many people that are afraid of cold emails or calling someone or person to person, sitting down for coffee. But building those kind of relationships, and even just showing up and saying, hey, I really admire what you're doing in whatever field you're working in, and I want to like buy you lunch and hear about what you do. Like that's kind of an old school way of handling it, but it stands out in a world that is increasingly more like isolated and like less socially engaged.
Making a one-on-one in-person connection, which I think we kind of lost a little bit with COVID. Like it kind of wrecked, no matter what you believe, no matter what like political party you believe in, no matter what, we can all agree it wrecked our ability and social reactions. It put us back a little bit, I think, as humans.
Yeah. In the arts, especially if there are people that are interested in the creative fields, like showing up often and all the time and going to things that you maybe don't have a personal interest in, but you're curious about what somebody's working in, like that sense of curiosity gets noticed, that gets valued. Showing up regularly gets valued. And sometimes it can be challenging if you're having to work 3 jobs and you don't have a lot of money and you're trying to figure it out, but there's always a way to wiggle in, like find the way to wiggle in, and most people working in the arts especially are super open to young people who want to be a part of something. Like they want to support that, they want to find a place for them. And sometimes that looks like giving, like, if you reach out, you might get a free ticket, or there's some sort of sneaky discount, or, there's some sort of reception you can get into that you didn't know about. Like there's all sorts of ways to do that, but being active and getting out there and showing up in person and showing face at these things and wrestling with the art that's being presented to you, it is so valuable. I mean, even here at Oz, like one of the things that when we're hiring, we're always curious about, like, what was your experience at this place?
That's crazy. So how did you get here initially?
I'd been living in New York for a time and really did not like my job in New York. I was like, I have to find something else. And I moved to Nashville for more like work-life balance, to like feel like I could have a fighting chance at affording anything. I was like, New York was like a dark place. And so I had been working here for a little over a year at a nonprofit called the YWCA. And this job had opened up. I had come to Oz like 4 or 5 times over that year to see different shows. And I was really curious about what was happening here. And I had met the former artistic director, Lauren Snelling, several times. And when I heard that there was a job opening that was more of like an entry level in the artistic programming side, I just knew that it was going to be like my chance to get it or not. Like this job won't open again for years, And I had started with my producing partner, Jessica Malone. We had founded Kindling Arts Festival already in 2018, right at the same time I was applying for this job. And those connections with local artists and those relationships were really valued in the interview process. And just having already been here several times and really interested in the programming and my history working at Arts Emerson in Boston, it all kind of made this perfect little whirlwind of the right fit for the organization at that time. And so, that was in 2018. So I've been here for 7 years as of this month.
Well, that's great. And like I said, congratulations on that. And it's always cool and exciting to see people who kind of move up and kind of get accustomed to it and add something to, I think, the overall experience of wherever you're working to.
Part of it for me has always been, I can be an annoying person in the sense that I always have an opinion about everything. Like if you ask anyone who knows me, they're going to be like, oh yeah, he'll give you his opinion on like anything, like anytime. But at the same time, I also take a lot of initiative. So like, when something needs to be done, I'm the person who's going to step up and try to do it. That can also be a challenge later on. Like later in my career, I've had to wrestle with delegation. That's really difficult, actually, it turns out, because I want things done a certain way. But, you have to learn to let go, and it's really not about that. And also thinking about how we make room for other people to share in the joy that is brought through the work.
I think we really like to have our opinion of what we think. We have our vision of what it looks like. We have a vision of what it's going to be when we get done. But then when you're in the process of it, you realize that, no, there's other people that are part of this process that I have to let in. And sacrificing, for me personally, has been something that I'm still trying to work on. Yeah. Is being able, like you said, delegation, and also being able to be like, I can't do that right now, and this guy says he wants to do it. I'm just going to let him do it. Yes. Or I'm going to work with this person. I said I would, and I'm just going to step back a little bit. That right there is the hardest thing for me right now.
Totally.
And I feel like I've gotten better at it, but still, it has been a struggle. So I relate to that.
I think there's something to learn about, like, something I'm always trying to remind myself is that there's no one right way. Like,
That's
my
good.
way is not the right way,
That's
actually.
good. Yeah.
But that can be difficult in the moment sometimes to remember, like, there are a million ways to do this. And also, like, we have to stop being precious about everything. You know, like, it really is a kill your darlings idea. I've been listening a lot to Amy Poehler's podcast, Good Hang, recently. And first of all, it's phenomenal. I can't believe how incredible the podcast is. But a lot of what she talks about is the way that improv comedy teaches you to throw away your good ideas.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's a good idea and it's gone. It's a good idea and it's gone. Or it's a bad idea and it sucked and you move on. And that's a really interesting thing, I think, to think about, of like how the first idea isn't always the best idea. You're never on your last good idea, something she talks about a lot, which I was really interested in. But, you know, and theater as an art form, and the performing arts in general, have to be a collaborative medium. So you kind of learn pretty quickly hopefully you learn quickly how to collaborate with others, how to partner with people. One of the really exciting things that we get to do here at Oz Arts is we get to display some work by local visual artists as well. This entrance hallway that becomes our entrance gallery gets a lot of really wonderful foot traffic during all of our various shows and events. And right now we have up an incredible exhibit by local artist Cy Clayton, who's a very talented young woman. She actually interned here once upon a time, but she makes these really beautiful self-portraits and representations of the self using the combination of her Japanese heritage and her Southern upbringing. And so she borrows this incredibly vivid no theater mask from Japanese tradition, and she's working with that to explore ideas of the inner and outer self, of masculinity versus femininity, and the ways that we look onwards, the performance of the self. So she's introduced these really cool, like, football players, then they're tackling, and there's a lot of really great movement in a lot of her recent work. And I love that we got to display some of that here at Oz Arts for several months this year, actually.
Say there, like you said, there's like 10 people, 20 people that all have an opinion about this thing, and you have to get it done.
Yeah.
When you get somebody that has an opinion that may be not logistical,
that's the easy out. The easy out is when you have a logistical excuse to say, well, okay, here's something that you're not thinking about the costs that are associated with this, or we physically don't have the sound system or the lighting that will accommodate that. But what's more complicated is when it's in a gray area and it's not a logistical concern that's going to make it difficult. It's just that you don't like that idea. And so that's where usually in everyone's idea, there's a kernel of a good idea, you know? So it's about finding like what part of that actually fits.
It's really special to see like a show be put together from the back end.
Yeah.
And I've only got to see it a couple times through YouTube videos and stuff, but that's a really interesting process because, and I think about this too, and I work at my church and I kind of have a event title-ish a little bit in the side there. We're mobile, so we go from place to place. Okay. And I never knew the amount of elements it takes for an event to happen. Yes. Yeah. No matter what scale, no matter what scale.
So Mark Murphy, our executive director here at Oz, he used to work with a production manager who had a saying that theater is the least efficient thing besides war. And it feels that way sometimes. Like there was a really cool project here in the spring of this past year called Weathering. And I love this project, but it is really difficult to put up because it's seated in the round. Well, that's a whole thing. Yeah. There has to be sound coverage for all 4 of those seating banks. You have to find all 4 of those seating banks. There has to be a dance floor down that's covered in marley in a certain shape. There's just like a lot of specific things. Yeah. And what I think the equation is that, especially in the presenting world, when you're working on something, but also in producing, I guess, too, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's something that we're always thinking about. And for Weathering, certainly it was worth the squeeze. Like that's an important piece of art that I'm really proud that we had here in Nashville, and certainly no one else would have done that in Nashville.
And this might just be a question that you may not be able to answer because it shows biasy, but out of all of the particular forms of art, which one do you find the most enjoyable?
Yeah, I have really become a dance nerd over the last decade. I like wanted to be a dancer as a young person, and I was like, my mother was like, no, you can't do that, that's for girls. And I was like, and so, we live, we learn, but I didn't get to really seriously encounter a lot of dance until the last like decade, especially working here. I love what people are doing in that field. It's fascinating the ways that they're not only using the body, but they're thinking about theatrical storytelling and marrying that with dance. The ways that it breaks down language barriers, so you can have people from all sorts of cultural backgrounds with different languages as their first language, and they can access that. And I feel really lucky to have gotten to see as much as I have in that world and to work with dancers.
That's interesting because that is a really good point about how, it does break down language barriers. And that's a big thing now. I think the U.S. is very culturally diverse.
Yeah.
And ethnically diverse, and also just from like a language diverse perspective. That makes a lot of sense that people, no matter what you speak, it can tell a story. And that takes a lot of work, and that takes a lot of heart. And I'd say I'm a writer out on the side, and I can imagine that's so much more hard because how do you convey a story through dance?
Right.
But what I have seen story, and it's just like art too, in the sense that when you look at a painting, like over there that's on the wall, it has its own story.
Right.
And the beautiful thing about it too is that it's not necessarily connected to language.
Right.
And that lets the viewer kind of construct their own idea of what that piece is saying.
Totally.
Which I think can be even more powerful sometimes.
And it's very meaningful in the field that we're working in, where we're doing a lot of international presenting. I mean, we're able to bring in artists from South Korea and Brazil and, like you name it, and they're able to share something with us about their experience without ever having to speak English. Maybe I've gotten a little extra oomph for sure, but like Nashville's dance scene is so vibrant. Like there are so many interesting people making dance in Nashville. And I think people from other cities would be shocked to learn that, because they think about Nashville as the music city, and they think about Southern culture as not necessarily having a vibrant contemporary performance scene, for example. But like, y'all, Nashville is popping off with dance. And
not just line dancing anymore.
Not even close to line dancing. Like, we're so far out of a line, we don't even know what we call it anymore. And that community has been such a beautiful one to like become a part of and share with, and regularly have in the space here. A lot of the local work we do is with the dance community. And it's beautiful. And they take it for real, for serious. Yeah.
Nashville's not just Music City. I think they have like a surface level branding of it. Like but for me, I compartmentalize that as Broadway. That is like
correct
Broadway Nashville think. And I think if you get out here, and I would invite anybody who hasn't been here to go outside of that.
Totally.
And to experience things around here that are unique and what people are actually creating today.
I am desperate to sit down with the Convention and Visitors Bureau and be like, where is the More Than Music City campaign? Like, we are so ready for it. Yeah. They have done an incredible job building tourism in Nashville around the identity of country music.
Yeah.
But if half of those people would step outside of that genre, outside of Broadway, and experience some of what else is happening in Nashville, they would be genuinely shocked. Yeah. Like, I think that it would completely overhaul our city if we had people thinking about it as a place that has a lot of different kinds of cultural vibrancy.
And also, I'm going to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of hot chicken either, Nashville hot chicken.
Oh, well.
See, here's the thing. I think as a gringo, as a white guy, not the greatest chances already of dealing with the heat. But that being said,
well, that part is legit. That you once a week max.
I don't think people realize that it's diverse here in terms of the amount of art and culture that we have here.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about the visual arts scene. I mean, which is a whole different piece of the puzzle.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So, and that's pretty vibrant too.
So Daniel, I'll ask this.
Yeah.
What's your purpose?
I mean, for me, I've spent the last decade of my life serving artists, and I think that will continue to be my purpose for a while. It's like, it feels so right to me, and I can't stop doing it. And so I think there is a purpose around making room for a more interesting version of Southern culture is probably one of my core tenets and mission statements. So I'm really invigorated by living in the South, but making art in the South as well. And all of the dissonance that comes from this really weird political region and this really like sort of, backwards thinking occasionally, but also like the beauty that's coming out of that, and the way that we're all kind of, those of us who've come out of Southern culture, like we're unpacking together our histories and our lineage and the trauma of the present moment as well. There's an exciting thing happening where we're going to actually be able to tell a different story about this region than what people have associated with it for a long time. So this is the Oz Arts Creative Warehouse. This is where the magic happens. All of our performances and events pretty much take place in this room. It's a very unique space, to say the least. Right now you're seeing it during the middle of maintenance week, so a lot of things are kind of torn apart into pieces and parts. What we normally have set up is where that white screen is, it becomes our sort of main stage space. And we will put down a big dance floor with Marley on it, and we'll build this really big seating bank that seats 300 people, and it kind of becomes a proscenium theater. And we also have done really interesting art parties in here with a bunch of small stages around the space that allow for kind of like a cocktail party vibe, but these pop-up performances from all sides. So it's a very alive space. It's a very exciting place to make work, and it's very unique technically to find ways that all the pieces can fit together.
For me, reflecting on that question for myself has been an interesting one, especially as getting out of college and kind of seeing this. I got asked that question, not what is your purpose, because I think it's a lot better than what do you plan on doing?
Right.
Because we don't know what we plan on doing.
Oh no, we gave that up a long time ago.
But I think what I answer to that is telling people stories and my story along the way.
Beautiful.
And I think that's through different mediums like this, and through writing, and even finding a way to do it with my church and stuff like that, and doing the media in there too. But all that being said, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that it's a very interesting point that people have living in the South. Is, we have all this history, dark history, talking about race relations, and I think at the end of the day, what I want the purpose for this podcast to be is I want it to be rooted in here, and also when I travel, to let people know that it's okay to listen to other people, even if they don't do what you do.
Oh, hopefully you will. That's the whole point. Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to end up on these little isolated islands.
Exactly. But I think that's where we are. That's where we are as a culture today.
No, it is. Yeah.
Because of our phones and digital age. And I'm not saying different in terms of like culture and lifestyle, more so I think breaking it down in the creativity and art that people create individually is what I want to highlight.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, tells the story. I think, and once you realize that, even though we all have different opinions about everything, sitting down and talking to people is one of the most powerful things we can do as a human.
Yes.
And I don't know.
And making space for those stories, even if they feel uncomfortable to you or they seem different from what you expect. I mean, even what you were saying about the creative fields, like one of the things I always am telling young people is like, go see work that's different than what you want to make. Like if you're a theater artist, go see dance work, so it's interesting that you're highlighting such a wide variety of creative fields, and some less creative than others, and some like very creative. But it's cool to think about blacksmith. Like I don't think about a blacksmith on a regular basis. Like me either. I work in the arts. That doesn't cross my mind for like years. So it's cool to highlight like all those different kinds of things, and also and see I'll be interested to see what you find as like the common threads too.
Yeah,
of those
absolutely.
people. 'Cause,
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and answer that. I think
Yeah.
the common thread of everybody is that usually people get excited when they talk about what they're doing.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting down and filming with somebody, it's usually because I've recognized that they have a passion for what they do. They've been doing it for a while.
Yes.
And that's why I wanted to interview you when my mom kept talking about you, because
Right. Tammy.
Tammy.
Come on, Tammy.
Yeah. And you've been a part of this organization that she joined, and
Yes.
I just want to thank you too, because she has been so welcomed by you.
Oh yes, she always says that. She's so easy. She's very lovable. That
She
Tammy.
is. She is. And I want to thank you for that, and also I was interested in interviewing you just based on what she said about what you do. And it was exciting, and I appreciate you being on to kind of highlight everything here, and also your personal ambitions.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, there's too many of those. But yeah, thank you for having me. No, it's so great. And thanks for also thinking about, this portion of the arts is a unique little corner of the sky. So it's can be a fun little world to learn about, hopefully.
And you know what? I'm excited to fly in that sky some more, I guess. So we'll see.
Yeah, you'll have to come to some shows.
I will. You know what? I'll look forward to coming some, and I always try to support the people I have on too.
Yeah.
The blacksmith Darren, he gave me a knife, and so I'm trying to figure out what to do with that, because he handmade a knife.
I'm gonna have to go see if I have any knives lying around, I guess.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So all that being said, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Anyways, guys, it's that time where I say you can subscribe and you can get notified when the next episode comes. We're heading in a month, August and September, where it's going to be jam-packed. So we've been doing bi-weekly. Now we're going to do weekly, hopefully. That being said, you can subscribe and turn on the bell to get notified when episodes drop, usually on Fridays. I hope to see you subscribe. And also, if you're interested or you know somebody who would want to be a guest, you can email us at convoswithaaron@gmail.com. We'd love to have you on. Like Daniel. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Aaron.
Of course.
Fun.
All right.
Subscribe, guys.
Thank you.